Hi, all. Carrie D here from Coffee with Carrie Homeschool Podcast. And I hope that you are enjoying my new book, Homeschool High School, a handbook for Christian education. Those of you who haven't had an opportunity to read it yet, I highly recommend it. It will totally hold your hand and help you see that homeschooling through the high school years is not only doable, but it's also fun. So again, it's called High School Homeschool. No, that's not what it's called. It's actually called Homeschool High School, a handbook for Christian education. You could get it at Amazon.com and ChristianBooks.com. Now, those of you who have read my book, you know that the middle section of it is full of information on how students can learn the different academic subjects and extracurricular and elective subjects in very traditional ways and non-conventional ways. And I have information in there on how students can, or how you can teach these different academic and elective areas in for the college-bound student, for the students who are trade school bound, for the students who have no idea what they want to do after they graduate high school. And so what I wanted to do in this video is to talk about history and geography and some of our favorite resources and curriculum that we've used over the years for high school level. Okay, so speaking of history, when it comes to the different states that you live in, if you live in a state like mine, which is California or Texas or Utah, it's very open-ended as to what is required and how those requirements are met. Okay, and then some of you may live in a little bit more restrictive types of states. But for the most part, on average, most states recommend that students learn U.S. history in high school, that they learn some sort of world history or world geography in high school, and that they also do at least a semester of U.S. government and a semester of econ. Okay, so I want to talk about today. I give a whole bunch of information in my book, Homeschool High School, in this section, but I wanted to share with you some of our favorite resources that we've used over the years in order to help us meet these requirements. Okay, now, first of all, you want to make sure, and I emphasize this in the book all the time, while you're creating the 4-year plan of what your student needs to learn and when he's going to learn it, you include your teen in the process, okay? Because when it comes to, let me go back up here, when it comes to U.S. history and world history, most states, it doesn't say what kind or how to go about doing it. So if your student wants to do a broad Western Civ type of wants to learn all about Western civilization, he can. Or maybe he just wants to concentrate on ancient history. Okay, that'll work, and that fits underneath world history. Or maybe in the world history, he wants to concentrate more on modern world history, or he wants to concentrate more on the different wars and the conflicts, okay? Or with the US, maybe he's really fascinated with early American history. Nowhere does it say that they have to do this whole scope of US history or a whole scope of world history. So get your student involved and find out what they would be most interested in learning, more of an overview or to concentrate on specific time periods or eras. Okay, so once you figure that out with your teen, our favorite approach was to combine our literature, our English requirements with our history. And so we literally read our way through history. So we picked the time period we were going to learn about. So if it was US history, we compiled a list of American literature that I wanted my kids to read, but it was all based on American history. So there was tons of historical fictions in there. There was tons of biographies and autobiographies and memoirs and primary documents and things like that. So as they were reading great literature, they were also learning American history, and I had them read it in chronological order. And some of those books that was on the list we read as a family during read aloud, and sometimes they were books that I assigned to my students for them to read independently because maybe the topic or the themes were a little too mature for the rest of the family. Okay, so you could totally just do that. Read your world through modern history, or read your way through Western Civ, or read your way through ancient history. It's doable. And then when you put it on the transcript, you can just go ahead and write it as world history or American history. Okay, you don't have to be specific about it. Now, if trying to come up with if you want to do this approach where you read your way through history with really great living books, but you really don't know where to start, or what books would be worthy or what's out there, then you can use curriculum like Beautiful Feet, which have a high school level history. And so they're reading their way through that, but with more high school level types of books. My Father's World is a great one as well. It integrates history and Bible and literature all together. And then Not Grass is also a really great one. It's a traditional textbook, but it's very comprehensive. So it covers everything. And when you think traditional textbook, think Not Grass. Okay. So it's not necessarily living bookish where you're learning about history through the eyes of people that experienced it. However, what's great about Not Grass is it also comes with supplements for literature. So it comes with this whole other book that your students can be reading literature and short stories and poetry in world history or in American history that supplement what they're learning in the textbook in that time period. Okay. Another thing that we did that I didn't write up here, but I want to share with you. Sometimes we read our way through history and sometimes we watched our way through history or a combination thereof. And so you can put together a list of really great movies and documentaries of a particular time period that your student is learning about, American history or modern world history or whatever. And every week you can watch different movies and different documentaries. And then as you're watching those, afterwards, you're discussing what did you learn about the time period? Do you feel like the movie was accurate to what it was really like then? If the movie was actually an adaptation of a book, you can then also read the book and compare the two. And so if you have one of your students is not necessarily a reader or likes to read, but man, they love YouTube and they love movies and cinematography, then you could do a film study approach to American history or world history as well. Okay. So another thing that is usually required by all the states is that your students learn at least a semester of US government and a semester of econ or economics. Okay. Now, again, there's great resources and curriculum out there if you want something very traditional. Okay. Abeka is very traditional. It's taught from a biblical worldview. You can't go wrong with it. Okay. But we didn't really ever use a traditional textbook approach when it came to our history and our literature. So what did we use? Well, when my students did American government, they read primary documents. So we actually read the Declaration of Independence. We read the Constitution. We read the Bill of Rights. I loved this resource. It's called Words Aptly Spoken, American Documents. It's full of all the things I just mentioned, plus different doctrines, presidential speeches made by other important figures, founding fathers, different court cases like Brown versus Board of Education, Jim Crow laws, all that kind of stuff. So it's in here, as well as obviously online and YouTube and History Channel and all that kind of stuff. But we actually read the Constitution and we discussed what those different articles in the Constitution meant. What are our freedoms? What are the limitations of our government? We read the Bill of Rights. I absolutely love the book, Know Your Bill of Rights by Matthews. He goes through each of the Bill of Rights. He explains the history behind it, like what was happening in the colonies and at the founding of our nation that caused our founding fathers to put that Bill of Rights in there. Like, what were the ways that Britain was abusing those rights and why they felt like they needed to make sure that we had those rights. So it gives you the history of it, but then it literally explains each right and what that entails, what our freedoms are, what the limitations might be. And then it also gives you some pretty current events times in our history where those rights were abused and where those rights had to be amended, which is why we have different amendments and things like that. And so we love that book. We literally spent an entire semester just reading that book aloud and discussing it. And then when different current events would happen, we would then talk about it. We're like, oh my gosh, we just talked about freedom of speech and how is this impeding these people's freedom of speech and things like that. Okay, so don't shy away from actually reading our founding documents and things that our presidents and our founding fathers and political leaders actually said. Don't rely on what the internet says that people said or a summary of what they say. No, just go read the actual documents, okay? And then have really great conversations about it with your teens, all right? Also, we did an awful lot of, we learned American government and econ always during presidential years. So when my daughter learned American government, it was a presidential election year. And when my son learned American government, it was a presidential election year. And it didn't always fall on their senior year. So we homeschool. They don't have to do this their senior year. They could take it whenever. So I just found that while primaries were happening, presidential debates were happening, polls were coming out, actual election night was happening, inaugural speeches were given, the transition was happening. I just felt that it made our studies of American government more real and meaningful when the process was happening. All right. So just kind of think about that. When I'm recording this, we're in the middle of an election year. And so it would be a great time to study American history with, not American history, American government with your teen. Okay. Also, most states will require or recommend that your students do at least a semester of economics. I think this is extremely important because the way things are going in our country, a lot of our teens and children are coming up and being taught that the free market and capitalism is bad, 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 and communism and socialism is good, good, good. And so therefore, I think it's real important that they understand what our country truly does do and why we do it and why the founding fathers put it in that way. Okay. But when it comes to learning about economics, obviously, I think it should be taught from a biblical perspective. So if you're using a traditional textbook of some kind, like a Becca or a Knotgrass, it's going to be great. Your students are going to be learning about stewardship and all that kind of stuff from a biblical perspective. However, if you're like us and you don't necessarily use a traditional textbook or outsource it and have them take it at maybe your community co-op or at a dual enrollment program at your community college, and you're doing it more eclectic, then definitely encourage and include the idea of entrepreneurship. So encourage your student to create a business, start a business. What are they good at? What kind of product can they make or sell? What kind of service can they supply? And then have them actually create their business and run a business. Or if your family owns a business, have them involved in that. Give them some of the work to do. Have them start doing the invoices or collecting payments or sending out the emails or whatever. Just get them involved in your family business. Or like I said, have them create their own business. Another great resource is anything by Connor Boyack. He actually wrote the book Skip College. I recommend this book for any student, any teen who wants to go to college, because it does have some great information about, yeah, there are some things you need to do that you need a college degree for. So he doesn't bash college. He just talks about not everybody needs to go to college. And so in the section of the book that he talks about, maybe you can skip college, he gives fabulous resources, information, and advice to those students who might just want to go out into the workforce straight from high school graduation and start their own businesses or start doing something on their own. Okay. So anything by Connor Boyack is great, including that book, Skip College. But he also has a curriculum for entrepreneurship and economics that I think that you will find very helpful as well. Okay, so those are just some of my favorite recommendations and resources that we used and that our friends have used. Also, I've mentioned this in other tutorials, but Definitely take advantage of the CLEP exam in the area of American government or economics, whether it's macroeconomics or microeconomics. What a CLEP exam is basically when a student takes a CLEP exam and gets a certain score on it, like a 50 or 60 or higher, that the college that they want to go to accepts, they get college credit for that. So they're exempt from taking American government at that college, or they're exempt from taking the intro economics course at that college. So they're getting general eds out of the way while they're still in high school, and they're doing it much cheaper. So when you take a CLEP exam, I think it costs $120, $125 to take a CLEP exam. And when they pass it and they get college credit for it, you just saved money, or your student saved $3,000 to $4,000. Because that's how much on average it costs to take one college class these days. Okay, so I love the resource, the website Modern States. It's tutorials, it's courses that your student can take that preps them for different CLEP exams, taught by different professors around the United States, and they do it at their own pace. So when they're finished taking this course to prep them for the CLEP exam, they get a voucher for that particular exam, and then they get to take the exam for free. So basically, by paying $120, $125 at Modern States, you get 2 for 1. You get instruction and prep work, but you also get to take the exam as well. Okay, so we loved using those. Also, your teens are still never too old to play games. There aren't as many out there for government and econ that I would like, but there are several that we use that we absolutely loved. One was called Constitution Quest. It's such a great game to learn about our Constitution and the 3 branches of our government. The whole family can play it. Also, I love the game Election Night. It does the whole thing with the Electoral College. It throws math in there, so it's sneaky about it, but they're also learning about US geography. They're also learning about the Electoral College, and they're also learning about how presidents are actually elected here in the United States. So there are some games out there, so don't forget to include that during your family time. All right, so like I said, I go into way more detail about how your students can meet their different requirements for US history, world history, or geography, American government, and econ in my book, Homeschool High School, a handbook for Christian education. You could get it at Amazon or christianbooks.com. I hope that you will read that. I know that it will help you breathe easier as you walk this high school journey with your teen. Also, I do talk quite a bit at my podcast, Coffee with Carrie Homeschool Podcast. I have several episodes on how to teach different high school subjects, how to teach high school in general. I also have some episodes on geography and government and history and using a literature-based approach and all that kind of stuff. So you can find some episodes there at Coffee with Carrie Homeschool Podcast. And if you're not sure where to go, just go to my website, coffeewithcarrie.org, and it will bring you to everything, where I am on social media, YouTube, which is probably where you're watching this video, my podcast, where to find my books and how to get them and all that. So I truly hope and pray that you enjoy learning about US history, world history, American government, econ with your teen using some of these resources.